guys, I have so many vlogs to catch up on, and I had to do like just a totally off-topic one. Okay, this is totally, you're not gonna get any fitness love on this one. Oh, rostrum. I had to tell you, this trip, it was like I took some kind of serum, or I had some kind of like scent pheromone going on, where like the freakiest, weirdest, most obscure men, freaks, trying to pick me up in the weirdest ways. I was literally like, am I being punked? Like, is someone following me around to see if I have this kind of look on my face? The first one happened when I go to check in at O'Hare to leave. I was leaving on Thursday, right? So I go to check in, I'm going through security or whatever it is, the, checkpoint, right? And I go through the line, and I always take my watch off, okay? Because when I first started traveling again, I got into this situation where every single time, okay? And I'm used to traveling every week, people, okay? And this never used to happen. Every single time that I was going through the TSA line, I was getting pulled over and having to get a full body grope. Seriously, every time, no matter what city, no matter where I was going, full body grope both ways. And I'm like, what the hell? And the woman was like, I think it's your bra. And I'm like, dude, seriously? Okay, how many women wear underwire bras? This can't be that you're gonna pull every woman over that has an underwire bra. So for some reason I thought maybe it was my watch, because she's like, maybe it's your watch, maybe it's your earrings. And I'm like, this is just odd. So as a habit, I've started taking off my watch. I don't have it on right now, but it's a little bit of a bigger watch, right? So I always take the watch off. Well, I go through security, right? And I'm going to put my shoes back on and the watch, and this guy comes over. Okay, please note, he's probably, I'd say, late 50s, early 60s. And he comes over and he's like, you don't really think that taking your watch off is going to help, do you? I'm like, well, and I kind of in a very short and sweet kind of way, tried to describe to him what had happened. And he's like, honestly, honey. He goes, are you a model? And I'm like, I wonder if this line has worked elsewhere. But I'm like, honey, I'm 5'4", I've got boobs and a booty, I'm not a model. And he's like, come on! And I go, I'm 40 years old, I'm not a model. And he goes, did you ever model? And I'm like, everybody's modeled at one time. You could look like a rock and be a model if you choose to. Yes, I modeled when I was younger. He's like, see, I told ya. And then he comes over and he takes my watch. He goes, can I just show you something, little lady? I'm like, okay. So he takes my watch and he goes and he runs it through the machine just to show me that the watch isn't setting something off. And he goes, I just want to let you know, those people that pulled you over, they just wanted to feel you up. I'm not lying to you. He said this and they were all standing around like, isn't that funny? Number one. Number two. I hope I do this in order. So then, yeah, let's see, there was that. I hope I'm doing this in order. Then I go to meet my client for dinner. This just drives me crazy. And we have dinner at the sushi place, right? And it's a sushi place that's kind of like one of those small ones in a strip mall. Okay, so it's not high on ambiance, right? And she and I are sitting, and there's probably like this dining room, if you will, of like, I'm guessing maybe 6 big tables, right? Not a big area, right? So we're sitting in the table in the back. And there's a guy at the table next to us. There's 2 guys to catty corner over there. And then there's like a couple over here. So these 2 guys that are over there, they were like just finishing up their meal when we got there. And I could totally tell, like I'm back up against the wall looking up forward. My client is with me looking this way. And those guys are over there. And I could tell that this one guy was just totally staring at me. And I'm just like, okay, I'm not out here to meet people on the road. You wouldn't believe all kind of people just are like rabbits on the road. Anyway. So I'm sitting there and we're having dinner, and these guys stay there for like an extra hour while she and I are like blabbing, and they're like just kind of sitting there. And I felt like they were lurking, but I'm not that cocky that I think the whole world is sitting around waiting to talk to me. And so long story short, they finally get up to leave, and then there's this awkward while like they're standing there, and the one guy leaves, and then this other guy comes over and he gives me a napkin. And Laura's like, oh, that's so sweet. And I saw like the first line of what he wrote, and it was sweet. It said something like, you're a very beautiful woman. And I was about to go, oh, what a sweet guy, That's nice that he said that. Then I read the rest of the note. And the rest of the note was pretty much like, I'd really like to buy you some more drinks. I'd like you to meet me. You know, he obviously had been listening to our conversation because he referred to some of the things I'd said, like I promise not to do this or that. I just promise you can have a wild time. Give me a text. I'm like, are you kidding me? Do I have the word hooker written all over my head? Seriously. But, you know, then again, you guys, I've been to some of these conventions, I've been on the road, I've seen people where they're like, morals to the wind. Obviously, I ripped that up. I took a picture of it and sent it to like Miranda and some of my friends, and I was tempted to post it here on Facebook, but then I thought that would be mean because a bunch of people would probably call this guy, and then somehow or another either he would find me or whatever. Oh, one of the things he said in the note too, he goes, I'm a traveler too. So, you know, that's basically code for going, no one's going to tell anyone. Okay, so that was number 2. Then I go to check in at the airport to come back home to Chicago, right? And so I go and I'm eating at the Houlihan's. I wanted to get a salad because you have to do this. You have to eat at Houlihan's before you go into the American gates because there's nothing to eat there other than a Starbucks and some really bad bar food. So I sit down and I'm right like at the corner of this, you know, where people are walking by in the hallways, like it's open to where, you know, all the gates are. So I'm sitting right there on the edge and, you know, kind of minding my own business. And I look around and I see this guy, kind of like a taller guy, African-American gentleman, and gentleman, I use the term loosely, and I see him kind of like walking up and back and staring at me, and I'm like, you know, like, do I have stuff hanging out of my teeth or what's going on? So then he like literally like walks around and then he goes, whoosh, and then he comes back and comes right over and sits down at my table. Doesn't even ask, can I sit down or anything like, he just sits down and he's like, hi. I'm like, hi. He goes, I go, you work here at the airport? Did I do something? And he goes, no, I work in finance. And I'm like, and he's really nervous, right? I'm like, oh, well, thanks. And he goes, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm in sales. He goes, are you from here? And I said, okay, I'm eating in a restaurant at the airport. If I'm from here, I'd either be going home, not standing around, hanging around at the airport. I'm like, no, I'm from Chicago. And he's like, oh, you're from Chicago? He's like, I'm in finance, and I think what you could do is you could help introduce me to people in finance through your work. What kind of work do you do? And I'm like, well, you know, I work for a company, we provide social media strategy for large organizations. He's like, well, you must know a lot of people in finance then. And I'm like, no, actually, we really don't work with a lot of businesses in the financial sector because there's a lot of regulation that we need to deal with, and kind of like pharmaceutical, you know, there's just a lot that's changing in those areas, so that tends not to be the vertical that we go after. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to basically give this guy every reason why I can't help you with your, you know, help me out and find some financial people in Chicago. He goes, well, I'm sure that you just know people in Chicago in finance. I'm like, no, can't say that I do. And he's like, well, I like to move to Chicago. And I'm like, you don't like your job here? And by this time the waiter's coming over and he can see that this guy has like, you know, what's the thing? You know, where they have a string and then they've got an airport badge on, and he's looking at him and he's looking at me and I'm like, so finally he goes, can you just call me and let me know about people in Chicago? And I'm like, I don't give my phone number out. And I go, tell you what, why don't you write down your email for me and I'll email you. So he goes, okay, like really thinking I'm going to email him after this incredibly awkward conversation. He starts writing it down. He goes, oh, my hand's shaking. Can you write it for me? I kid you not. I couldn't make this stuff up. So I get rid of psycho number 3, or weirdo number 3. I go check into the gate. I get my stuff, run to the restroom, get my Starbucks, and I'm sitting down on all of these like chairs right outside the gate. And there's like I'd say this guy's like 23, 24, sitting next to me. I sit down and I kind of start opening my newspaper. I'm like, whew. And he's like, hey, what's up? I'm like, did I put some kind of special perfume on that's saying, talk to me, I'm a major catch? I have no idea why all these men and boys are talking to me. And I'm like, I'm fine, how are you? And he's like, what do you do? I'm like, seriously? I go, sales. He goes, oh, come on, one word answer? I'm like, so literally, this young guy keeps asking me and drilling me about my work, where I work, where I'm from, and then finally I'm like, you know what? I have to go to the restroom. And I literally like hid out in the restroom because I'm like, what's going on?